Right now, a significant winter storm is still impacting the Northeast at this time, where Boston right now is under a fairly moderate to heavy snow ban. So you need to take precaution if you're driving on the roads for the night, because of course this snow is going to be associated with very gusty winds, and that could lead to whiteout conditions at times in some of these areas. And this snow is expected to continue over the next several hours before this low pressure system will eventually move to the Northeast, more towards eastern Canada, and that's when the snow threat should be all said and done here for much of New England and the interior Northeast. However, for the next couple hours, you still need to pay close attention to heavy snowfall all throughout New England before the storm is all said and done. And for, at least for the near future, the Northeast should not be in the trajectory of any future snowstorms, which is certainly good news if you're not necessarily a fan of the snow. However, the Midwest could get impacted by a significant winter storm by the late this week. Taking a look at the latest depiction of the European model, we see that this low pressure system was forecasted to have a millibar pressure that was close to the 970s, where at that point right now, so this storm is quite powerful and it is capable enough of producing very gusty winds close to 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. So watch out all throughout the night for much of New England, and eventually the storm will move out to sea and will weaken just a little bit once it avoids a lot of that instability that's located right up along the coast. And the snow threat should be all done by tomorrow morning for much of New England. Now, moving forward to our next potential major snowstorm for much of the Midwest, we do see that the low pressure system is expected to move ashore right up along the California coast, where we do see heavy rainfall between San Francisco all the way down to Los Angeles and San Diego. So you need to pay close attention to the possibility of flash flooding associated with some of these heavier rain bands. And of course, in the higher elevations of California, you should expect not inches but feet of snow from this storm system, so make sure to pay close attention to that. But moving forward, the key thing that's going to be associated with this low pressure system is that there's going to be plenty of cold air behind it, and along with this strong ridge that's located in the midsection of the country, that's going to set the stage for a highly unstable and convective environment for this storm to rapidly intensify, or at least maintain its strength once it enters the midsection of the country. And we do see that throughout Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota should get involved with very heavy snowfall, and this will be a relatively quick mover since the jet stream winds will be quite strong as a result of this instability, and there isn't necessarily a blocking ridge that's going to slow this storm system down. So while this will be a quick mover, the snow will be very heavy in a very short period. So even if you might not necessarily experience a high amount of total snowfall accumulation, that total snowfall will fall at a very fast clip, potentially 1 to 2 inches per hour. So throughout Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, and Minnesota, you need to be aware of that possibility, especially in northern Wisconsin, where the snow impact should be a little bit more significant, since this storm will be a lot more formidable by the time this approaches you guys. So you're going to experience more of a prolonged duration of heavy snowfall, where you could experience close to a foot of snow in many areas along the extreme northern portion of Wisconsin and the northern portion of Michigan. So you want to pay close attention to that possibility. And so Minneapolis, prepare for 3 to 6 inches of snow right around that range. And uncertainty with the storm system is very high. The GFS model is agreeing with the European model scenario at this time, so that definitely raises certainty that we are gonna experience a significant snowstorm moving through the northern Midwest. As for the areas such as Chicago and Milwaukee, this will likely be entirely a rain event for you guys. You might experience some snow flurries on the backside, but don't expect any snowfall accumulation, as it seems like this ridge just to the east of this low pressure system is going to be a little bit too strong and bring too strong of a southerly flow, which will force the warm air further northward for precipitation to fall in the form of snowfall for those cities. So if you're hoping for snowfall in Milwaukee and Chicago, the bad news is that it's likely that the southerly winds will be too strong to allow that to occur in those areas. So keep that in mind, right around Chicago and Milwaukee, that the rain snow line should be just to the north of you guys, and this should mainly impact the areas such bigger cities such as Minneapolis and Wisconsin will of course get involved, at least the northern portion, as well as the northern portions of Michigan. And then continuing to move forward, we could see some snow in the northeast, but again, it seems like the ridge is a little bit too strong in this scenario. So outside of maybe the northern outskirts of Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont, this will be a rain event for the northeast. So don't expect any snow further southward throughout the northeast, and the GFS model is also in good agreement with that. So make sure to pay close attention to the high probability of a major snowstorm moving through the Midwest. Now, moving beyond this snowstorm, there could maybe be that possibility of a nor'easter developing by next week, where we see quite a powerful low pressure system move up the east coast, and this brings heavy snowfall to Pennsylvania, Ohio, upstate New York. But again, we see that much of the Interstate 95 corridor, at least in this scenario, experiences more of a rain event. But this would be certainly a significant snowstorm, whether it snows, or a significant storm system, whether it snows or not, because this will likely produce very strong winds, and coastal flooding would be likely. And based on the position and the angle of the low pressure system would approach a coast, this will allow the winds to move over the open Atlantic for a prolonged period. So that will enhance the storm surge, especially right up along New Jersey, Long Island, and potentially even New York City. So there's definitely something to be aware of, but it is very far out. I'm going 6 to 7 days out. A lot could change, especially since the GFS model isn't agreeing that a nor'easter of this magnitude will develop by next week. So I'll keep you guys updated if this forecast maintains. There could be that possibility that maybe that snow moves a little bit further eastward, closer along the coastal cities, but we still have yet to see any indication of that from the computer models. But there's still that possibility, especially when we're 6 to 7 days out with the forecast. So I'll keep you guys updated regarding this storm system. However, for this next Midwest storm system, it is likely you will experience a significant snowstorm. So make sure to prepare in cities like Minneapolis and the north. Right around Omaha, you need to prepare as well, and including the areas further northward in Iowa, you need to prepare for the possibility of heavy snowfall. So make sure to keep that in mind. And the GFS model is showing a very similar scenario. The GFS model is showing a very similar forecast to what the European model is stating, at least for the near future. We see that this storm system just off northeast coast will eventually move to the northeast by tomorrow, and that's when the snow threat should diminish for much of New England. But moving forward into this next Midwest snowstorm, while the GFS model does forecast a very similar trajectory to the European model's scenario, the key difference is that the GFS model is forecasting this low pressure system to be a little bit stronger than the European model. So we do see higher snow totals in this scenario, where we do see that the area of snow consolidates a little bit more. It's a little bit larger than the European model, and we do see snow bands that are slightly heavier, and we see a millibar pressure that's definitely lower compared to the European model, where the European model at the point it reaches Iowa has a millibar pressure that's hovering around the 1,000 millibar range, while the GFS model wants to take the millibar pressure down to 992 millibars. However, I'll still lean more to the European model scenario in this case, as it seems like the European model is getting a better hold of how much cold air will be behind the storm system. It seems like the GFS model is exaggerating regarding how much cold air will be behind the low pressure system. So it's exaggerating, of course, the amount of convective available potential energy that will be associated with this storm system. However, it seems like the European model is a little bit more confident and gets the better idea in a scenario like this, how much instability will be located in the mid section of the country. So I'll still lean a little bit more to European model scenario, but we can't completely disregard the GFS model either. And even though the GFS model is different when it comes to strength and total snowfall, it still brings snow to a lot of the same areas. So the certainty regarding the trajectory and who exactly receives snowfall is certainly high. There's still a little bit more uncertainty regarding the exact snowfall accumulation, but for the most part, it should be right around ballpark at this time, since we're less than 72 hours out from this event. So the forecast is fairly certain when it comes to snow totals as well, and even more so for the trajectory and the exact area of snow there will be with this storm system. Now, moving forward beyond this storm system, so we see that the GFS model doesn't want to bring a nor'easter as strong or taking a similar trajectory as the European model. And the reason why is because the GFS model expects much a stronger ridge that's going to be built over this low pressure system, and just to the west of this low pressure system that's going to try to force this low pressure system further southward, and it wouldn't be able to move as far northward without getting forced to move a little bit eastward. So we don't see that snow or the low pressure system really impact much of the northeast. It's still a pretty formidable and strong low pressure system just off the southeast coast, and does bring heavy rain to the Carolinas and some snowfall in the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountains, but it's definitely not as significant of a nor'easter event as the European model's scenario. So we're going to need to keep in mind which of these two scenarios will be the more correct scenario over the next several days. It's going to take several days to really iron out that forecast. Really all depends on how much ridging there will be just to the east and just to the west and just to the north of this storm system, because I'll determine how far north this storm will go. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. This is the European model snowfall forecast over the next several days. We do see that Minneapolis could experience close to, if not over 6 inches of snow. I'm assuming that 1 inch of precipitable rainfall equates to 10 inches of snow, which isn't always the ratio, of course. So I'd say the snow totals will be a little bit less than what you see right here. I expect more like 3 to 6 inches in this area rather than 6 to 10 inches of snow. However, in northern Wisconsin and the northern portions of Michigan, that's where you should expect more so, right around 6 to 12 inches of snow, and potentially a little bit more than that in certain areas of Michigan. So make sure to be aware of that when taking a look at these forecast maps. That they do exaggerate a little bit, because also another thing to point out is that this measures how much snowfall accumulation falls from the sky and not necessarily how much of it sticks on the surface. And of course, it takes time before each snowflake sticks on the surface. So the snow total should be a little bit less than this, but still expect pretty significant snowstorm moving through the central and northern portion of the Midwest. And moving forward to this next potential nor'easter that would happen by next week, this will be extremely significant, bringing over a foot of snow to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, as well as portions of Ohio. So we're going to need to pay close attention if this forecast maintains from the European model or changes, because I'll really determine if we're going to be in for a significant snowstorm or not for the northeast, or will the snow be relegated more out to sea. Well, I'll just keep you guys updated over the next several days. The GFS model is showing a very similar forecast when it comes to snowfall. Much of Minnesota, Iowa, even portions of Nebraska and South Dakota are forecasted to receive 6 to 12 inches of snow. Again, expect a little bit less snow than this, more like 3 to 6 inches in a lot of these areas. But northern Wisconsin and Michigan, that's where you should expect the worst of the snowfall. And for the northeast, expect less snowfall than this as well, because the forecast hour this starts at, it already has passed today. So don't expect much more snowfall in the northeast over the next several hours, but make sure to watch out on the roads tonight, because it could be dangerous, and along with those windy conditions, those could create whiteout conditions at times depending on where, if you're in a heavy snow band or not. So be aware of that possibility for tonight, but not much more snowfall accumulation should occur for much of New England for tonight. So here's my snowfall forecast for much of the Midwest. So in places like Minneapolis, northwestern Iowa, as well as portions of Nebraska and South Dakota, you should expect 3 to 6 inches of snow by the Friday timeframe, and then a little bit more than that in northern Wisconsin and northern Michigan, where you should expect anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of snow in those areas. And we're going to need to pay close attention to the possibility of a major nor'easter by next week for northeast. So make sure to stay tuned for more updates regarding this next nor'easters forecast over the next several days. But thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content.